We're going to move on to our second guest immediately, and his name is Professor Zachary Steel. Professor Steel has worked in the field of traumatic stress for over 25 years as a researcher and clinician. He has a long history of work with populations affected by trauma, including veterans and emergency service workers, as well as those affected by mass conflict and forced displacement. Professor Steel is a senior lecturer at the University of Tasmania and teaches mental health and psychiatry subjects to medical students. And gosh, I hope he's in the room. Can you give me a wave? There he is, excellent. I haven't had a chance to meet you yet. Could you please make him very welcome, Professor Zachary Steel.
Not quite with the Uni of Tassie yet, but so I'm going to show a video to start with, just to try to consolidate some of the things that Kim said before. Now, let me just give you a little bit of a background to this video, and also to put a little bit of a warning underneath it as well. So this was a video that was developed by the University of New South Wales as part of every year in the eastern suburbs of Sydney, we have a program called Sculptures by the Sea. And the university entered into this competition, a big blue head, but it was to try to capture what it's like to live with PTSD. So I'm going to show you this video, and it's what we call a first-person vantage point of PTSD. So as you travel through the world, what it's like to experience intrusions and flashbacks and derealization and depersonalization. Now, I have sort of learnt from experience, I did show it to a few colleagues and people that have had a history of PTSD, and they found it a little bit confronting. So just because I know that there are people here with lived experience, so I just want to alert you to this, and you know, if you feel like you might be triggered, it could just be a good opportunity to step outside. I still think it's very important to show this because it perhaps creates an understanding of why PTSD can be associated with quite a bit of impairment, and why carrying PTSD over a long period of time really debilitates you and can wear you down. So this is a very beautiful scene. This video starts as if you were to start at the point in the sculptures where this appears, and just walks through some of this really picturesque landscape right on the edge of Sydney. So if that video is ready, we might show it and put the volume up. was a lot of research that went into that video of interviewing people of some of the different physiological sensations that they would experience. There was startle response in there, there was tunnel vision, there was derealisation, flashbacks, intrusions. But you could see how the everyday experience of PTSD can be extraordinarily debilitating because your body goes through a reaction as if those events are really happening. But what should be a wonderfully beautiful, picturesque seaside thing where what most other people are looking around thinking, isn't it a beautiful day today? But when you're looking through those eyes, it's a very different lived experience. And you also see how biologically driven the condition is. Lots of Kim's research has just shown the different sections of the brain directly involved in producing those sensations. And why we can't diagnose the condition by brain scans yet, we do see people with PTSD responding to normal stimuli very differently to other individuals. Now, my section here is just very short, and it's to put a little caveat to Kim's talk before I hand over to Andrea. There's been a very recent development that's quite important in the field, and Kim alluded to this, and this is that the European system has split PTSD into two components. I'll just sort of show you, one of the things that we've realised is that sometimes PTSD is extraordinarily debilitating, and it leads to profound, not just intrusions and nightmares and flashbacks and startle response, but we start to see just people's self-confidence, self-respect, relationships all start to deteriorate. And for many, many years we've seen survivors of very severe trauma or repeated trauma more impacted than, say, single incident trauma. And a lot of workplace trauma exposure has this cumulative quality. And so rather than put those into the diagnostic system like you see there in green as the American system has used, the European system has split it into two, PTSD and complex PTSD. And complex PTSD has all of the symptoms of PTSD, but it's where that is no longer just a impact on these kinds of core PTSD symptoms, but we see that person's relationships begin to deteriorate. We see their sense of self-value and self-worth begin to crumble, and their ability to manage distress. Now, many of you are involved in also claims and claims management, and you'll know how reactive sometimes individuals with PTSD can be, and that's often that inability to deal with distress. Now, we don't know what the implications of this for treatment, but we know that this more severe version of PTSD can be reliably identified, and it does have a higher prevalence in people with repeated exposure. So we are seeing that in first responders and military at higher rates than following, say, single incident trauma. But we do know also that this responds to treatment. It's just important to recognise it because it perhaps explains some of the symptoms around it a little bit more. So I might just end there, perhaps just before I end, I'm happy to take any questions, just a moment or two, if there are any particular questions right at the moment. I won't give you too long because Andrea is anxious. But that gives you a little bit of a first vantage point of what it's like to have PTSD. Thanks.